Hi, I'm Godfrey Parkin, and you're watching Growth Hackers, the show which helps you figure out how to use digital media and digital channels to grow your business. Today, I'm going to be talking about search engine optimization. It's something which people ask me about all the time, and it's something which causes a huge amount of confusion, particularly amongst people that are not really experienced in terms of digital marketing. It's one of those areas which people think of as being rocket science fiction, really difficult to get your head around, but it's not. Search engine optimization is both an incredibly important thing to understand and to implement, but it's also a relatively simple concept to master for your own business. So let's talk first of all about what SEO, or search engine optimization, is really all about. When you want to find something, when you want to find a local restaurant, you want to find somebody who can help you to do your taxes, you want to find somebody who can book you a holiday, where do you go? How do you find out? Well, typically what you would do is you'd ask your friends and your family. You might ask a Facebook group that you're a member of to see if you can get some advice from people. But really the first thing you do before you even do that is you Google it. Google it has become one of those terms which basically means ask a search engine to help me filter out all of the thousands of possibilities down to maybe half a dozen that I can then consider. And we all Google all the time. We don't even think about what we're actually doing. As a business, though, it's important to understand how you get Google to take you seriously and to recommend you above the hundreds of other alternatives that are actually out there. So there are a number of ways of looking at this. First of all, let's take a look at it from the perspective of Google. We talk about Google, although it's not the only search engine, but it is really the only game in town. What business is Google in? Google is in the business of providing an incredibly satisfying search experience to its users. That means that it wants you, when you use Google, to be really happy that you used Google because Google delivered results which made a lot of sense to you and actually help you to solve your problem or satisfy your need. If every time you used Google, you ended up wasting time going to look at websites and web pages that weren't anything like what you were hoping to find, you'd pretty rapidly stop using Google and start using another search engine like Yahoo or Bing or one of the others that are out there. So Google's business ambition is to make you really happy that you use them to do your search and not somebody else. That means that they're very conservative about what they recommend. They have to recommend something to you which maps perfectly to what they think you are looking for and provides you a solution as quickly as possible. And it's got to be a solution that is safe, secure, and accredited or recommended. How do they do that? The internet has got, last time I looked, 25 trillion pages on the internet and growing exponentially. How does Google figure all of that out? And how do you, as a business, get yourself inserted into that mass in such a way that you pop to the top? Okay. The first thing you need to understand is how Google goes about doing what it's doing, because if you understand how Google does it, you'll understand how to actually help it to understand who you are. So search engines use a technique which is called spidering. A spider is a little piece of code that runs around the internet, visits web pages, picks up the content of those web pages and scurries back to Mountain View, California, and dumps all of its information about those pages into a hopper, and that hopper then sorts them through, tries to understand them, and tries to then rank them. There are millions of spiders in the web. They scurry around all over the place, and they pick up whatever they can. But they're pretty limited in what they can do. So they're designed specifically for only one purpose: to follow hyperlinks, which are those little blue underlined things that you find all over the internet, which are signs which take them to other pages. And when they get to those pages, they grab everything on that page. They don't just grab what you see, they grab everything that you don't see on that page. They look at the code, they look at the tags within the code, they look at the nature of the code, they look at a great deal of information about that page that you never get to see as a person who arrives on that page. All of that then gets accumulated into a place where Google has a thing called an algorithm. And the algorithm, which is a term you hear over and over again, it's a secret recipe. It's a way of adding up components and weighting each component so that at the end you get to a score. In Google's case, there are about 200 known factors that they look for on every page that they visit, and there are probably 2,000 unknown factors that they look for. They're very, very secretive about their algorithm. But each factor has a weighting. So, for example, they would look at the clarity of your grammar, and they would weight a page with good grammar against a page that has poor grammar. They would look at whether or not you've got spelling mistakes on the page, and they would downgrade a page that has spelling mistakes on it, because who wants to send a searcher to a page that's full of errors? They would look at how clear it is on your page, how easy it is to read your page, how easy it is to scan the page, because these days nobody reads text, they scan it. You literally look at it and your eye goes straight down the page at high speed, pauses only for a couple of things: headlines, images, and hyperlinks. So Google looks at the structure of your page and decides whether or not this is a page that would be pleasing for you to arrive at and to look at. I'll go into more of the details of that a little bit later on. But essentially, they pull that information together, and then they balance the score that you have on your page against the score that they've given to other pages that are about the same subject. The subject is what they have to derive from your content. So Google has to understand what your page is all about. That's not as easy as you might think it is, because a lot of pages are very complicated. There's a lot of bits and pieces on it. There are lots of subjects, there's lots of images, there's lots of different things on that page. And Google has to figure out essentially what the core meaning of a page is. What is the theme that is covered by that page? Google hates pages that have got multiple themes on them, because if you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 different things on a page, it doesn't know what the theme is. So it can't match a single search query to that page because it's not sure what the page is all about, so you can forget about ever showing up in a listing for that ranking. So the simpler your page is and the more clear it is, the better. All right, let's wind back a little bit. Google needs to know what your pages are all about, but it also needs to know how credible your page is. It needs to know whether it can be trusted. They don't want to send people to a website or to a web page that has problems on it, that may be spammy, that may have links going off to spam websites, that may be in one way or another untrustworthy. So they look at the credibility of your page, they look at what they call the authority and the popularity of your page. How do they know how popular your page is? How do they know what the authority level of your page is? Well, they do it primarily by looking at the links that are coming to your page from other people's websites and from social media. If you've got a web page that has got 1,000 links coming into it from 1,000 different sources outside of your web page, then that looks like a pretty credible page, because there's 1,000 people out there have decided to send their visitors to your page. A human being has made that judgment, not Google. Google has got this thing about being a robot, and it knows that it can't actually judge things like awesomeness. Okay, it can't do those human value judgments. It's incapable of knowing whether a web page that contains a recipe for chocolate cake sounds delicious. Okay, all it can do is it can say, well, it's a recipe for chocolate cake and these are the ingredients, but it can't go, that really is good, I can't wait to taste that. But other people can, and on their social posts on Facebook and on their websites, they might actually recommend that people follow this link to this page because there is an awesome chocolate cake recipe. So a lot of the qualitative judgments come from what other people are saying about you and whether or not they're taking the trouble to send people to your page by linking to your page. So those factors are really kind of important because Google is really just an engineering tool. It can structure and it can take to pieces all of your code and your words and your grammar and your images, but it can't make value judgments. It relies on real human beings to do that. Okay. So its spiders will come back from your website and it will be classified as being about a particular theme, not your site, but each page will have a particular theme and a particular level of credibility or authority. Your job as a marketer or as a business person is to make sure that you're as impressive as possible to Google and its algorithms, which means you need to understand what they are and do the things that it respects. That's easy. Okay, it's relatively easy to do. So let's go through some of the ways that you need to go about doing that. First of all, you will find on every web page that you've ever been to, there's a title, there are headlines, there is text called body copy, there are frequently images and videos, and there are hyperlinks. And somewhere at the bottom there'll be a bunch of footers which link to other places on the website. You need to be able to tell almost at a glance what your pages are all about. So your page needs to distill its essential theme very, very quickly and very readily. How do you do that? Well, in the old days, you used to do that by stuffing all sorts of keywords onto the page and repeating words over and over again. Google doesn't respect that anymore. Google actually has the ability to do what it calls contextual inference. In other words, it can look at the words and the sentences and actually understand them, whereas previously it just looked at the words. So now, because of the increasing growth of intelligence in the Google system, you don't need to artificially stuff keywords into your page. You need to make sure that your page flows and works well and is unambiguously about a particular theme, and then Google will know what that theme is, and then it will match that theme to a search query for that particular theme. So be careful about the way you compose the content on your web page. Okay, make sure that your headlines and your subheadings contain some reference to the theme on your page. They don't need to be the absolute keyword that you would associate with that theme. Be sure that you have got a really easily scanned body copy so that it's easy to just at a glance pick up what this page is all about. Google respects media, so if you've got images, you'll get extra points. If you've got video, you'll get huge extra points. Okay, so Google knows that what people are looking for most of the time is video, because let's face it, nobody wants to read if you can watch a video. So if you have a video on your page, Google will give you like extra gold stars for that, and you'll end up with a page that Google would rather recommend over a page that doesn't have video on it. At this stage, it doesn't matter how good the video is, because Google can't tell whether it's good video. Okay. That's coming. Give it a few months and Google will actually be watching your videos and pausing it and deciding whether it's any good or not. But right now, just having a video gives you extra traction. So if you do that, you've got a page which will stand out about more than your competitors perhaps will. For a lot of people, that's a little confusing because most people like to put as much information as possible into their website. Don't do that. If you have a lot of information, if you have a lot of things to say, break it up into different pages. Okay? Google sends people to pages, it doesn't send them to websites. So if somebody searches for tax consultant in Weinberg, and you've got a page which says, I'm the best tax consultant in Weinberg, Google's going to make that connection and send people straight to your page. But if you've got a website which is one page that talks about tax law and the ways to get around this and things that you should be doing, and lots of content on one page, but never actually makes reference to who you are or what you do or where you are, then Google's not going to be able to match you to those search queries. Now, there was a time when search engine optimization was a relatively straightforward process. It's become a little bit more complicated because Google has become a little bit smarter. Google can contextually analyze your page. So Google can say, all right, this is a person who is talking about tax, but the rest of his website is really all about banking. Therefore, this is probably not a tax consultant. This might actually be a financial advisor. So the context of your website actually helps them to understand a little bit more about you. Google also personalizes. So if you and 5 of your friends or colleagues search for exactly the same query on their Google, on their machine, on their phone, or on their laptop, they will each come up with a different set of recommended pages. That's because Google follows you around. Google knows what you've looked at before. Google knows what your interests are. Google has a pretty good idea of what you might be interested in. So no two people will ever get the same two search results. And that's fine. That's great from a marketer's perspective. It's a little bit awkward from a management perspective, because it means that every time you look at what shows up when you search, you're going to get your pages coming up, but somebody else might not. So just be aware of that. There are ways of getting around that, but it's a problem. You need to understand that what you're seeing is what you're seeing. It's not what the rest of the world is actually seeing. And of course, it is also localized. So a query searching for a tax consultant or a cake baker is going to prioritize websites or businesses that are within the geographical vicinity of the person who is doing the searching. How does Google know where you are? Google can track you down. On a mobile, it's very easy. They can tell to within a meter where you actually are. If you're searching on a laptop, the IP number or the address at which you are accessing the internet is identifiable to a geographic location and an address. So it's pretty easy for Google to know where you are when you're searching. And by the same token, it's pretty easy for them to know where each individual business is located. As a business person, you need to make sure that if you want people to come to your business and you're not doing web-based distribution of product, that Google knows where you are. There are a number of things you can do there. First of all, Google will be able to approximate that based on your IP address and on the addresses that you actually put onto your website, because it always looks for your local address. It'll look for a number of other indicators of where you actually are. One of the easiest things you can do, though, is to identify yourself on a Google map. So you go to Google Maps, you drop a pin on a place, and you name it, and you say, this is my business, and these are our hours of operation, and you can fill in all the details that Google asks you for. And that then anchors you in Google's memory as being somebody that is locally based in that particular location. So anybody who is searching around that location is going to become aware of you before somebody who is 20 kilometers or 100 kilometers or on the other side of the world away. Help Google to know where you are, and you'll find that that actually helps you to drag a lot more business your way. There's a couple of other things that you need to do. And these are less easy and less obvious. Every web page contains what are called meta tags. These are pieces of code that nobody sees when they come to your website, but which Google sees. So when Google's spider arrives on your page, it looks for those tags. The tags are very, very straightforward. The first one is called a title tag. The title tag is the title of the page. And you, as a business person, need to put that tag in place. Or you have to ask your web developer to do it for you. It's a relatively simple process if you're using a WordPress website. That tag, that title tag, is the thing that shows up in a Google search. So when you search on Google, say you're searching for wedding cake bakers, you'll get a list of websites showing up on the page, and each one has got a title and a bit of a description underneath it, as well as the URL or the location of the website. The title tag and the description are text that you put into your web pages. Okay? Google looks for those. If you don't have a title tag, it's never going to list you in a search result. Make sure that your title tag is very brief, ideally no more than 50 characters. Make sure that it contains the keyword theme of your page, delicious wedding cakes or excellent tax consultancy. And make sure that it doesn't go on longer than 50 characters, because it'll just be truncated. You'll end up with ... and an unfinished thought showing on there. Don't be obsessed about putting your brand or your company name in that title tag. And if you do want to put it in there, put it at the end of the sentence, because nobody's going to see that anyway. Okay, people look at the first 2 or 3 words in the title tag as they're scanning down that page. The second tag you need to complete is a thing called a description. And that description tag is typically the black text that runs 2 or 3 lines underneath the title, which is a compelling way of describing your business and giving people a reason to come and visit you. Again, make sure that the theme of your page is in that description, and make sure that it's informative and compelling and doesn't sound like you're dishonest. Okay. Those two things are really, really important, because not only do they help Google to understand what your page is all about, they're very important in Google's understanding of what the theme of each page is, but they're your advertisement. When people are doing a Google, that's what they're going to see. Think of it as a classified ad in a newspaper, if you remember what those used to be. Okay? If people are scanning down a page of results, the title and the description have to jump out at them as being something which is, well, this is really relevant to what I searched for. So I've searched for a Chinese restaurant in Sea Point, and the title tag here says it's Sea Point's greatest Chinese restaurant. That helps me to know that what I'm searching for is mapped to here. I'm going to click that and go and see what it's all about. Okay. Really, really important that you do that. And it's surprising how many websites do not do that. And it isn't done on most websites because most web developers don't see that as being their job. It's a marketing job. All right. They can put the text in, but you need to tell them what the text is. And the text needs to be unique for every page on your website, because every page on your website needs to have its own theme. Okay. So with a smaller business, you're probably not going to have more than 5 to 10, maybe 15 pages. Make sure that you sculpt those so that you give yourself the best opportunity of being clicked on as people go through. There are a couple of other ways in which you can actually make your website more easily found. And these are a little bit more complex, and you probably, unless you're comfortable with code, you probably need to get your web developer to do this for you. One of them is called OG tags, or Open Graph tags. Open Graph is Facebook's way of describing the world. And what you can do with Facebook's Open Graph tags is you can put onto your website, again invisible to people who are visiting your site, but visible to robots. You can put in a series of coding lines which tell Facebook to show an advertisement for your page every time somebody on Facebook links to it. So you'll be familiar with how you upload a YouTube video to a Facebook post. When you do that, all you do is you post the link to that video, and automagically you get an album cover, you get a description, you get a name of the song, etc., etc., etc. Okay? You can do that exact same thing with your website. And you just put those lines of code into your website which say, if anybody on Facebook links to my page, make sure we hijack their post and we show this photograph, this headline, this call to action, and this body text. It's a free way of actually turning somebody's reference into a great advertisement for your page. You can do exactly the same thing with Twitter. Twitter has a thing called Twitter cards. Again, it's a few lines of code, but you can instruct Twitter that if anybody on Twitter links to your page, then they should not only show their link and their tweet, but they should also pull in an image, some text, a call to action, and so on. In fact, in Twitter, you can do even more than that. You can actually pull up a playable video. And it's free. You don't pay for that. So you're crazy not to do it. Even if you have to pay your developer a small amount of money for putting those lines of code into place on each one of your important pages, it's really a worthwhile way of doing it, because it helps you to be found when people are doing social references to you as well. The last thing that I need to talk about with SEO is how to be relevant to your customers. Okay? So we talked about mapping a search theme to a page theme. But really what you need to do is start right at the beginning and think about this whole thing of who is my customer, who is my most typical customer, or who are my most typical groups of customers, what are their needs that I can satisfy, and what are the words that they would use when they go onto Google to search for a solution that I can provide even though they've never heard of me. They're not going to go and search for your brand name. They're going to search for a generic. I'm looking for somebody who can make amazing wedding cakes. I'm looking for somebody who can give great tax advice. I'm looking for somebody who can fix a broken motorcycle. Those are the words that people are going to be using when they go into Google and search. Make sure that you list those out. List them. Group them into clusters, and for each cluster, pick a theme. Okay, it might be amazing wedding cakes, it might be wedding decor, it might be great wedding days, it might be unique ways to decorate cakes. But pick a theme for each one, and then make sure you've got a page on your website that maps to that theme, and that page is then fully optimized in the way that I've just gone through. And you'll find that your website structure becomes very customer friendly, very customer centric, and really, really easy to find on the internet. Being customer-centric is one of the most important things to do, and I say that over and over again. Think through your presence through the eyes of your customer, and your customers will find you, will like you, will respect you, and hopefully will also link to you from their Facebook page and their Twitter and pop up those great ads that you've already set in place. That's all we have time for today. I look forward to seeing you again next time. You've been watching Growth Hackers. Thank you.